Hello, I'm Thomai Dalpanagioti, and I will present a cognitive perspective on the representation of multi-word expressions in electronic language dictionaries. My study is motivated by the elusive nature of multi-word expressions, which are notoriously difficult to handle in lexicography. Although dictionary practices continuously develop, it remains unclear how multi-word expressions should be represented in dictionaries. My aim is thus to demonstrate how cognitive semantic theories can help improve the treatment of multi-word expressions in electronic dictionaries. To this end, I will first briefly examine the Big Five monolingual language dictionaries with regard to the representation of multi-word expressions, and then I will present an alternative cognitively informed treatment. Aspects of form, meaning, and presentation of multi-word expressions are examined in the crawl and dash entries of the online language dictionaries by Oxford, Longman, Cobbett, Cambridge, and Macmillan. More precisely, the dictionary entries are compared with regard to coverage and arrangement of multi-word expressions, how the same multi-word expressions are classified across the dictionaries, and whether the same types are treated consistently. As regards coverage, we do not expect to find great differences since all these dictionaries are corpus-informed. Variant forms seem to be consistently recorded with only slight differences, and similarly, there is agreement on the semantic and pragmatic information reflected in definitions and labels. However, variation can be observed with regard to the arrangement of multi-word expressions. Although hyperlinking multi-word expressions to a separate entry seems to be the most common practice among the five monolingual language dictionaries, there are various positions in which hyperlinks are placed. Hyperlinks may appear as separate sentences, as in the first example here from Longman, or they may appear in an idiom's or phrasal verbs box, as in the second example from Oxford. Hyperlinks may appear in right-hand panel with more results, as in the example from Cambridge, or in both a box and a right-hand panel, as done in Macmillan. When multi-word expressions are not hyperlinked, they are defined and illustrated in the main entry as a separate sense, a typical practice in Cobbett, or in a sub-entry in a box, a strategy preferred by Oxford. As regards classification, we can find clear-cut cases like dash off, which is labeled as phrasal verb and accessed through a hyperlink in all dictionaries, but also more challenging cases like be crawling with and dash somebody's hopes, which are tagged as fixed phrases in some dictionaries and as contextual realizations of a sense in others. As regards the question of consistency, there does not seem to be an identifiable type-specific treatment. Irrespective of whether multi-word expressions are collocations, idioms, phrasal verbs, or situational formulas, the general tendency is to present them separately from the main entry, in a separate hyperlinked entry or in a separate box in the entry. And even when they appear among numbered sentences, there is no indication of their relation. To sum up, based on the examination of the sample entries, we can conclude that corpus analysis has led to the relevant consistency in the representation of multi-word expression, variant forms, meanings, implications, and illustrative examples. However, corpus analysis cannot address the issue of linking semantically related units into a coherent network unless, of course, combined with an appropriate theoretical model. We thus argue for interpreting and structuring corpus-derived information in the light of two cognitive semantic theories: frame semantics, as advocated by Fillmore, and conceptual metaphor and metonymy theory, as laid out by Lakoff and Johnson. Instead of detaching multi-word expressions from the main entry, we propose incorporating them in the network of lexical units. So let's see in practice how crawl and dash multi-word expressions can be integrated in motivated semantic networks. In both case studies, we cluster corpus uses and distinguish lexical units, single word and multi-word lexical units, based on FrameNet's frames. Separate senses generally correspond to different semantic frames and assign different frame elements. To lend further support to the frame-based sense distinctions, we consider how they are motivated by the cognitive mechanisms of metaphor and metonymy. Promoting a cognitive-based rather than a frequency-based approach to the ordering of lexical units, we proceed from literal to metonymic to metaphorical extensions, and we organize lexical units into a tiered structure with two main clusters of related senses, that is, motion and action in the crawl case study, and motion and impact in the dash case study. While all crawl lexical units correspond to different frames, to discrete frames, here we notice that the frames departing and cause impact are mentioned twice. This is due to our decision to distinguish between lexical units that evoke the same frame when corpus uses exhibit distinct semantic pragmatic nuances not reflected in frame distinctions. For example, dash it all here is separated from the other cause impact uses because it serves a special discursal function. However, in combining semantic and contextual criteria for determining lexical units, we pay particular attention not to elevate mere contextual variations to the status of a lexical unit, because it is easy to lose sight of the semantic integrity of words by means of excessive splitting. Relevant in this respect is the collocation dash somebody's hopes, which is treated as a usage pattern rather than as a standalone lexical unit. The two case studies make it clear that all instances of the various multi-word expression types are motivated. That means they have clear conceptual links with other lexical units. However, these are not reflected in current dictionary practices, which create distance between semantically related lexical units, for instance by hyperlinking multi-word expressions to separate entries or listing them in separate boxes. What is suggested instead is to take advantage of the flexibility of the electronic medium to translate cognitively oriented information into microstructural dictionary features. Adding frame-based signposts as guide words and using a tiered structure with clusters of senses ordered in a logical manner can be applied to whole entries to make connections more transparent. We should note in this respect that Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary uses guide words in the entries examined, yet without rational arrangement of sense divisions. For example, the multi-word expression be crawling with appears far from the move literal sense, motivating sense. And we should also notice that Macmillan dictionary uses a tiered structure, yet without incorporating multi-word expressions in it. Besides these general techniques, frame-based signposts and tiered structure, multi-word expressions in particular could be recorded, of course with frame-based signposts, in alphabetical order in a menu at the top of the entry to facilitate access, but they could also be placed within the related sense division in the entry text to indicate semantic motivation. For example, the idiom variants make someone's skin, flesh, scalp crawl could be placed separately in the menu to facilitate access, but they could also be placed under the motion cluster after the motivating lexical unit be crawling with. In this way, the entry could draw users' attention to both the overall meaning through the frame-based signpost and the internal structure of the metaphorical multi-word expression through its position. Descriptions of conceptual motivation can be used not only to position multi-word expressions inside the entries, but also to systematically incorporate a new type of information in electronic entries. What is proposed in this respect is to create short and simplified notes about how multi-word expressions are connected to the motivating meaning, and include these notes in definitions and or in awareness-raising notes. For example, the use of the word movers in the definition of be crawling with is a clue to its link to the literal motion lexical unit 1. Awareness-raising notes can have the form of hyperlinked notes that explain the underlying motivation of multi-word expressions. For example, complementing the definition of make someone's skin, flesh, scalp crawl with a simplified note on the experiential grounding of the idiom schema could facilitate learners' understanding and recalling. To sum up, this study has highlighted the need for a rational organizing framework that could help users make sense of the rich corpus-derived information on multi-word expressions. We have proposed incorporating conceptual information in various elements of the microstructure to show the relation between the unit, the meaning, and its components, the form. Enriching learners' dictionaries with cognitive information is expected to have positive effectiveness on L2 vocabulary learning, but more user studies are needed to firmly support it. Thank you for your attention.